The other day, I was scrolling through the comment section of a major Korean news portal, following a thread about a complex new semiconductor policy. On paper, South Korea is a miracle of logic, a global tech titan with one of the highest education rates on Earth. You'd expect the digital discourse to reflect that, a rigorous data-driven debate about supply chains or geopolitical leverage. But as I scrolled, the logic seemed to evaporate. Instead of economic analysis, I found a digital battlefield of raw, vibrating emotion. People weren't dissecting policy. They were hurling labels, their words fueled by a strange, giddy intensity. It felt less like a discussion and more like a tribal ritual, where the only goal was to hit back at the opposing camp. What struck me wasn't just the vitriol, but the speed. In the cultural slipstream of Pali-Pali, the Korean drive for fast, deep thought appeared to be a luxury no one was willing to afford. I noticed a comment from someone who clearly understood the industry, an elite professional by the looks of it. Yet even they bypassed the nuance to drop a biting one-liner designed to spark a collective roar of approval rather than a moment of reflection. To them, a fragmented 15-second clip was ironclad proof, enough to dismiss an entire white paper. But then things took a confusing turn. While the public square looked like a bonfire of digital populism, I looked at the trending charts for Korea's knowledge-sharing platforms. They were booming. People were paying premium prices for hours-long, hardcore lectures on philosophy, finance, and history. This jarring split, this instantaneous shift from cold, hard calculation in private to hysterical emotionalism in public, is more than just internet drama. It raises a haunting question. Is the Korean internet truly a graveyard for rational thought, or is something much more calculated happening beneath the surface? Today we're looking at why one of the world's most intelligent societies seems to have developed a deep-seated allergy to deep analysis in the public eye, and whether this rationality gap is a unique cultural trait or a warning sign for the rest of the digital world.
Yeah, that contradiction is exactly what we are taking apart today.
Because it's a massive topic for you to wrap your head around, especially if you're used to the Western internet.
Right, we're looking at a society that's arguably the most wired on the planet. The internet, there isn't just a utility. I mean, it's the air people breathe.
But the way that air moves the currents, the storms, is just fundamentally different.
Completely different. And to get to the bottom of this, we're unpacking a pretty heavy stack of reports. We've got cybersecurity analysis of South Korean platforms, sociological studies on Han and that Pali culture you mentioned, plus economic papers on R&D intensity.
And some fascinating data on online petitioning, too.
Exactly, because the mission here is to understand how a hypermodern digital society functions on a completely different operating system than the West. It's an OS based on high context, emotion, and speed rather than open debate.
Synchronization. I feel like that's the key word here.
Synchronization, yes.
Because from the outside, it just looks like chaos, just a wall of noise.
Yeah.
But if you look closer, there's a rhythm to it.
A very strict rhythm.
Yeah. And to understand that rhythm, we really have to talk about speed. Not just internet bandwidth speed, which, they have in space, but cultural speed. That concept of Pali-Pali.
Ray, hurry.
Right. The physics of speed.
It is the heartbeat of modern Korea, born from rapid industrialization, the miracle on the Han River. They had to build a country from the ashes of war, and they had to do it yesterday.
Which brings up a specific case that I think perfectly captures this relentless pulse. So there's this account of a software architect in Panyo. Let's call him Minho.
Okay, yeah, the Panyo case.
Right, so imagine Minho sitting in his glass-walled office, typical high-tech district vibe, and he's watching a company-wide Kakao Talk group just explode.
We're talking thousands of messages.
Thousands of messages within minutes. And this was all over a minor UI shift in their software. Now, in a Western context, you'd expect, what, a long thread of emails?
A scheduled meeting. Or a really long Slack thread breaking down the user experience philosophy.
Exactly. But Minho didn't see any of that. There was absolutely no Western-style philosophical debate.
None.
Instead, there was this lightning-fast convergence toward a single collective vibe. He wasn't seeing individuals arguing points of logic. He was watching a digital swarm moving in total unison.
And that's the aha moment for him, right?
Yeah. By the time he finished a cup of coffee, a consensus had solidified. Something that would take a European firm 3 weeks of committee meetings happened in 10 minutes.
Purely through high-context emotional cues and the sheer pressure of speed.
Right. He doesn't view this as a mob mentality, at least not in a negative way. To him, it's a digital engine for state-level efficiency.
That phrase is crucial. Digital engine for state-level efficiency. Because in the West, we prioritize the explicit content of the message. Is the argument sound? What's the logical progression?
We want everything spelled out.
Spelled out, debated, challenged. But in a high-context culture like Korea, which is deeply rooted in Confucian norms, the priority is the context. It's the relationship.
So Minho isn't reading those thousands of messages like a legal brief.
Oh, he's engaging in nunchi.
Nunchi. That's the ability to gauge the mood, right?
Yeah. Or reading the atmosphere instantly. On the internet, especially in a Kakao Talk chat moving at warp speed, you literally do not have the time to type out a 3-paragraph essay on why you disagree.
You just get buried.
You'd get buried and you'd be missing the point. You have to signal alignment or misalignment instantly. Because of Pali-Pali, that alignment has to happen right now.
So the logic isn't in the text of the argument itself. The logic is in the speed of the alignment.
Unlike the Western internet, which champions the marketplace of ideas and individual debate, the Korean model values harmony and collective direction.
But there's a cost to that, right? I mean, consensus over debate sounds great for efficiency, but what if the consensus is wrong?
Well, the source material acknowledges that cost heavily. It mentions the immense stress, the intense competition, and the absolute suppression of individual dissent.
The nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
If you're the one person trying to slow down the swarm to ask a purely logical question, you're not just being annoying. You are actively breaking the harmony.
You're disrupting the flow.
You're a friction point in a society that views friction as a threat to survival.
So this preference for their own way of doing things, this high-speed, high-context harmony, it doesn't just shape their culture. It actually shaped their literal internet infrastructure.
Yeah, they built their own internet.
The Galapagos of the internet.
Right. When you look at the data, South Korea is one of the very few countries where local platforms absolutely dominate the U.S. tech giants.
Nowhere over Google. Kakao over Facebook or WhatsApp.
And unlike China, where that's largely due to government firewalls, in Korea, it's driven by consumer preference. It's a digital home bias.
Digital home bias. That's the polite academic term. But the history behind it is wild. It goes back to the late 90s, the Hankem-Microsoft incident.
A legendary moment in their tech history.
For those who aren't familiar, Microsoft tried to buy out Hankem. They're the local company that makes Hangul, the Korean word processor.
Microsoft wanted to shut it down, basically, and move everyone over to Microsoft Word.
Which, from a pure business logic standpoint, makes total sense. Standardization, global integration.
But the Korean public didn't see it as business.
No, they saw it as an invasion. It was viewed as a direct threat to their cultural sovereignty. The public actually rallied. They launched this massive national campaign to save the local software.
They raised funds. People were practically treating a word processor like a national monument.
And it worked. Hankem survived. But that sentiment, that intense need to own and protect their digital tools, that created this unique, self-contained ecosystem we see today.
A system perfectly tailored to Korean sensibilities. High context, community-focused, and fast.
The Berkeley cybersecurity analysis we looked at points out a massive digital paradox here.
The double-edged sword of digital sovereignty.
Right, because the state-led push for domestic platforms kept the foreign giants out, but it created massive platform concentration at home.
You're effectively creating domestic monopolies.
Monopolies that become critical infrastructure. Kakao Talk isn't just for chatting. You use it for banking, paying taxes, accessing government services.
It's state infrastructure run by a private company.
And we saw exactly how vulnerable that makes them. The Kakao data center fire. It blacked out the entire nation. It wasn't just that you couldn't send a meme. People couldn't hail taxis, businesses couldn't process payments, government portals went dark.
Gosh, when the super app goes down, the society paralyzes.
Because they put all their eggs in one basket to protect themselves from the outside world.
But the infrastructure failing is just one vulnerability. The concentration makes the ecosystem incredibly susceptible to manipulation.
The algorithm hacking.
The reports detail how foreign actors, potentially from North Korea or China, have actively manipulated Naver's news algorithms.
Because they know about the home bias.
They know Koreans trust domestic platforms way more than foreign ones. If you can game Naver's algorithm, you can shift the entire national mood.
Because once a manipulated narrative takes hold, that Pali-Pali swarm mentality amplifies it before anyone can even think to fact-check it.
The high context speed becomes a weapon against itself.
Yeah. Their cultural cohesion is basically being used as an attack vector. So you have this high-speed, highly concentrated, emotional public square. It looks incredibly chaotic. Yeah. But we have to pivot here because if you think the whole country is just reacting emotionally online, You are missing the engine room of the society,
The elite knowledge economy.
the hidden rationality. Let's talk about G1.
G1's story is the perfect counter-narrative.
Right, so G1 is a senior researcher at a major battery plant, and her daily routine completely shatters the idea that Koreans don't do deep analysis.
She essentially ignores the social media noise.
Completely. During her commute, she's not scrolling through those emotional tribal comment sections I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
She is consuming premium, incredibly dense, hyperlogical newsletters.
We're talking hardcore breakdowns of global supply chains, semiconductor yields, geopolitical shifts.
And the key insight here is how she views this content. She doesn't see it as leisure reading. To her, it's intellectual armor.
Intellectual armoring.
She views her individual knowledge as a literal brick in the wall of national resilience.
And that stark contrast is fascinating. The public comments are a battlefield of raw emotion, but the private consumption of the elite is rigorously logical. It's entirely utilitarian.
It's the physical output of intellect.
Yes, and to understand that, you have to look at the economic context. The R&D intensity papers outline this perfectly. South Korea spends a massive percentage of its GDP on research and development.
Way higher than most Western nations.
Right, and this isn't just organic free market innovation, this is state-led. Look at the G7 program.
Right, the initiative to catch up to the top economies.
Exactly. The government creates these massive national missions, whether it's dominating memory chips, scaling up EV batteries, or now AI initiatives. And the elite workforce, the G1s of the country, they execute these missions with absolute military precision.
So the rationality gap I mentioned at the beginning, it's not actually a lack of logic in the culture.
Oh.
It's a partitioning of logic.
Partitioning is the exact word for it.
Logic is reserved purely for output. It's for industrial competitiveness, for exports, for literal national survival. Meanwhile, the public internet is reserved for affect, for emotion and bonding.
This goes back to their educational roots, too. The sources touch on the utilitarian economy school and the school for seeking truth through facts.
Right. Education as a strategy, not just self-discovery.
Education is about building the nation. Your intellect is a resource meant to be deployed for the collective good. So pouring your logical energy into an internet argument, that's a waste of the resource.
Because winning a debate in a comment section doesn't increase battery yield.
Exactly. You don't get points for being the smartest person in the Kakao Talk chat. You get points for out-innovating a competitor in global markets.
So we have these two massive forces. On one side, the public, digital, swarm emotional, incredibly fast, tribal. And on the other side, the private, intellectual, armor-cold, calculating, utilitarian.
And you might wonder how those two sides don't just tear the society apart.
Right. Which brings us to the ultimate test of this system. What happens when a real physical crisis hits?
When the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. Let's look at the Mom Cafe crisis.
This is such a revealing case study.
So, Mom Cafes are these hyperlocal, highly influential online communities in Seoul and other cities. They are very high contact.
And they can be incredibly polarized.
The story goes that one moment, this particular Mom Cafe is just a toxic political shouting match. Total digital vitriol, people threatening to leave the group, hurling insults over local politics.
The surface friction we talked about.
Right. But then a massive logistics strike hits the city. Delivery networks freeze. Supermarkets might run out of essentials.
A real threat to the community.
A real threat happens. The emotion vanishes instantly.
It just evaporates.
The polarization is gone.
Yeah.
In its place, this instant, institutionalized coordination takes over. Within hours, the same people who are at each other's throats are mapping out local resources.
They're organizing supply runs, managing distribution, taking care of the vulnerable.
And this illustrates a concept the sources call Eastern resilience.
Right. Because to a Western observer, that prior polarization looks like society breaking down. We think, oh, they're too divided, they'll never handle a crisis.
But the polarization is just surface friction. The core of the society is a survivalist collective, and it activates automatically the moment a crisis hits.
It's the logic of emotion. When we analyze the data on South Korean online petitions, specifically the Blue House petitions, you see this clearly.
Those are the petitions where if they get enough signatures, the government has to officially respond, right?
Yes. Hundreds of thousands of signatures. And the researchers found that the most successful petitions aren't based on calm, policy-driven logic.
They're based on moral emotion.
Exactly. Guilt, loathing, deep anger.
Which again looks irrational to us.
But it's highly rational in their context. It's a mobilization tool.
A survival mechanism.
Look at the Confucian concept of preparedness. The sources quote the book of poetry about gathering bark before the rain.
Gathering bark before the rain.
Right. There is a deep historical obsession with being prepared for disaster. So when you see all that emotional venting online, they're not just complaining, they're policing the boundaries of the tribe.
Testing the fence.
Testing the fences, making sure everyone is on the same page, sharing the same moral outrage, so that when the rain actually comes, when the crisis hits, they can move as one.
Which perfectly explains their COVID-19 response.
The no lockdown strategy.
Yeah, the data shows it worked. And it didn't work because the government used brute military force to keep people inside. It worked because of voluntary high-speed compliance.
The population accepted intense digital surveillance for the greater good.
Because the we is always prioritized over the I.
Western debate seeks truth through conflict. We think if two individuals argue long enough, the best idea wins out.
The marketplace of ideas.
Right. But the Korean digital model seeks survival through cohesion. The individual voice is secondary to the collective direction.
So synthesizing all this, we really have to rethink the rationality gap we started with. We started by looking at this confusing split between a brilliant, highly educated society and a comment section that looks, frankly, unhinged.
And we discovered that the noise isn't actually noise, it's that high-speed synchronization mechanism.
Pali-Pali.
Right. And we learned that the logic hasn't disappeared at all. It's just been privatized, channeled entirely into industrial output and national survival through people like G1.
The intellectual armor.
Exactly. And finally, we found that what looks like chaotic tribalism is actually a built-in safety feature. It's the mom cafe dynamic. It allows for rapid, unified mobilization the second a crisis arrives. So that rationality gap might not be a bug in their system.
No, it's a feature. It's a feature of an operating system designed specifically for survival in a really hostile geopolitical environment.
While the West constantly worries that the internet is destroying objective truth, the South Korean example suggests their internet is being used to maintain the collective self.
But the cost is the individual voice. As the rest of the world faces more and more rolling crises, supply chain shocks, pandemics, geopolitical shifts, we might start seeing the Western internet look a lot more like Korea's. It might become more emotional, faster, and much more tribal, not because we are losing our minds, but because we are subconsciously preparing for survival mode.